Hi, Pastor Nathan Decker with your hashtag Better Together devotions for today. And this week I've been sharing about spiritual growth. And what I mean by that specifically is growing closer to Christ within this journey of Lent. And we've talked about a variety of ways to do that. Well, one of the ways that most people don't understand about our faith, because it's kind of oxymoron. It's even within the liturgy of the United Methodist Church when we do a confession in the traditional sense before coming to the table, we find joyful obedience. That sounds weird because obedience has such a negative tone in our culture. The idea that, oh, well, if you're obeying God or obeying some rule or law, doesn't that take away from your freedom? Doesn't that limit you somehow? And the reality is, yes and no. Actually, many of us have found great freedom and great growth spiritually in rule, a rule that's of life somehow, a way of living our lives so that we are orienting ourselves more Christ-like, orienting ourselves to follow the way, as Jesus called it. You see, Benedict, who started the monastic movement, he did so with rules. There were certain things that those who were following had to do. And they were excited about these rules. Not They didn't look upon them begrudge, oh Lord, I gotta follow some rule. No, they were excited about these rules because what they found inside of the rules was greater freedom, greater salvation than outside of the rule. So, what does this mean? What is a rule? Well, a rule of life is when you've sat down in a prayerful state, discerned with God. That's uber important, y'all. Discerned with God that you're going to try to do something on a regular basis in order to grow closer to Christ. So, for some folks, it literally means giving up a lot and taking a rule of poverty. For others, it may be a rule of chastity. For some, it may be during these 40 days and 40 nights of Lent that they fast and that they give up something that they normally indulge in. For many, it's more simple than that. My own rule of life for me is that when I wake up in the morning, I spend time reading the scriptures. I spend time in the silence and prayer. I spend time in a mindful meditation. I read devotions. And it takes me, and I'm not joking when I say this, less than 10 minutes to do all of that out of my life and out of my day. 10 minutes out of the 24 hours that God gives me every day. And when I miss it, and I do occasionally, I find myself really lost. And I find also that I feel more chained and enslaved to the desires of this world, to the places and thoughts that don't come from Christ or from the way that Christ teaches. But when I do participate in my role, I find so much freedom, so much salvation, so much deliverance from the person that I know I'm not called to be. Grow spiritually during this season of Lent. Get closer to God. And do so by getting lost in awe, finding yourself in ancient stories, simply meditating or singing songs of love, or spending time in the quiet. But do so not as some kind of gimmick to say, hey, look at me, I'm so religious, but do so as a way to get closer to God. Grow spiritually today and be better together.